Hey Little Mountain Lions, Mr. Lee here. This week we're focusing on striking with implements. So I want to show you a few different activities you can do with a tennis racket and a tennis ball. I want to show you a couple different parts of the tennis racket before we jump into the activities. The first thing I want to point out is the head of the racket that has strings, also known as the face there. And then we have the grip. Okay, now when you're grabbing a hold of a tennis racket, you want to do a handshake grip. So just like you're shaking somebody's hand, okay, you're going to turn the racket and grab a hold. So all these activities we're going to do today, I want you to do a handshake grip. All right, so one thing I wanted to say really quick is if you do not have a tennis racket or a tennis ball at home, watch the video that Mrs. Klinger made last week showing you how to make your own racket at home. So always options if you don't have a tennis racket or a tennis ball. Another thing you can do for these is just use your hand. Okay, if you have a ball or a piece of crumpled up paper, you can also just practice with your hand. Right, so our first challenge is simply balancing the ball on the face of the racket or on the strings of the racket. Start by just doing it stationary, which means you're just standing in one spot. Really getting to focus on balancing the ball, keeping the racket really flat. Once you get the hang of that, try to have the ball go in a clockwise pattern around the face of the racket. And then also try to go counterclockwise or opposite of the way that a clock goes. When that gets easy, then you can start trying to walk and balance the racket, balance the ball on the racket, turn around, just like that. Right, so our next little warm-up activity is going to be bouncing the ball up on the face of the racket. So for this, you can either start with the ball on the racket or you can toss it to yourself. And the goal is to see how many times you can bounce the ball up without the ball hitting the ground. So just toss it up. And what I'm doing is keeping the racket face really flat, and as the ball comes down, I'm pushing the ball back up with the strings of the racket. Now, if that gets easy, you can challenge yourself by using your opposite hand. So for me, that's my left hand, my non-dominant hand. And if that gets easy, you can try to do flip-flop, where you're flipping the racket over. Have fun. Right, so for our next warm-up tennis activity, I like to call these bounce downs, and really it's like dribbling a basketball. Okay, so for this, you're just gonna get the ball going, and as the ball comes up, you're gonna push it back down. Okay, really get that rhythm going. As it comes up, you're pushing back down. Same thing if you wanna try using your non-dominant hand, you could do that as well. It's a little trickier, but it's a good challenge. Another thing you could do is try to do it while walking. Okay. Have fun. Our next activity I like to call a bounce and scoop. So the idea here is you're going to toss the ball up in the air. You're going to scoop under the ball, bounce it up, and let it drop to the ground. So we're going to bounce and scoop, bounce and scoop. You want to get under the ball. You want to keep your racket strings, your racket face really flat so the ball pops straight up. And see how many in a row you can do. All right, so for our next little activity, we're gonna have a target here and we're gonna do our bounce and scoop with the goal of having the ball hit the target, okay? Now, if the ball does hit the target, give yourself a point. You can assign point totals if you wanna work on counting by 5s or 10s. This is a great opportunity to do that. So you start, just bouncing the ball, pop it up, oh, 1 point. 2 points, okay. And so on and so forth. So it gives you a target, work on your accuracy and control with the tennis ball. All right, so I just wanted to walk you through some dynamic stretches that you can do as a warm-up for this week. So for each of these, you want to do them for about 30 seconds, and we're going to be moving while we're doing our stretches. So the first one I want to show you is knees to chest. So you're going to take a step, bring your knee up, and a step, bring your knee up, okay. And you just want to give a gentle pull. You should feel this in your hamstrings a little bit, okay? All right, so our next warm-up activity we're gonna do is called high heels. So we're gonna bring our heels up and go down and back for about 30 seconds. our next dynamic warm-up stretch is called Frankenstein. So for this, you're gonna bring your leg up to what's comfortable, okay? Step, bring your other leg up, okay? You don't wanna push it too hard, okay? Just do what's comfortable. Is side shuffle. We've done this a lot in PE. So you're gonna bend your knees and you're gonna push off with your foot that's planted. Side shuffle. Right, our next warm-up activity is called grapevine. So you're gonna put your foot in front, step, foot behind, step. And as you're doing this, you wanna also get your hips turned. All right, so nice and warmed up now, and if you are gonna play tennis, it's really important to get your shoulders and arms loosened up a little bit too. So we can do some arm circles for about 20 or 30 seconds. Then you'll be ready to hit the tennis courts.